Right, Harry, thanks so much for joining us. Such an exciting time for you, and the news came through recently that you're going to take over from James at his place next year. Just fill us in on the decision and what is the news for Team Eustace.
Thanks, Ollie. Yeah, it's very exciting. So I've, as you said, just finished with William Haggis, and that was sort of Saturday week. I've been there 4.5 years, and been working towards this point for what has felt quite a long time, and it's finally here, and it's time to make the plunge.
So your father, James Eustace, currently training in Park Lodge Stables. So you're going to be going into that stables, is that right?
Yeah. So I'm working there now. He's obviously still got the license, and he will hold that until sort of January, February, March of next year. I, through a number of reasons, between an Australia trip and COVID, lost out on a couple of the trainers modules. So they're coming up in October, November, and then you renew your license typically in February. So that felt like quite a natural time to change it anyway. And essentially, I'm just going to be aiming for the start of the flat turf season. Really, there might be a few before, but that's the main aim. Yeah.
There's a lot to get through, and lots I want to ask you. But just for those that don't know, you mentioned the trainers modules. What do you actually have to do to become a racehorse trainer? Because you've obviously got loads of experience, but what is the
Yeah, I mean,
technicality?
that's obviously part of it. There are then quite rightly certain, not hoops to jump through, but you have to sort of reach certain levels of criteria for them to feel comfortable giving you a license. And it starts with something called MVQ3, which is a sort of, it's more like coursework used to be, I would imagine, is the easiest way to describe it, which is not what I thought we'd be doing when I dropped out of Edinburgh University 2 years in. So that you start with that, and then you have the 3 modules, and they're between 4 and 5 days long. You can either do them at the British Racing School here in Newmarket or the Northern Racing School in Doncaster. And then there are a few other sort of criteria you have to go through. They come and inspect the property you're going to train out of. You have to have proof that you've got X number of horses starting. And you also have to prove that you have the finances to be able to pay bills and wages and that sort of thing. I think for, say, the first 2 months, so obviously you won't invoice until a month has gone, and then it's another month once the invoice is paid. So it's roughly that, I think.
But that's, I mean, that in itself, given the climate we're in, and the news came through about a much longer period without racing fans, etc. How tough was it to take the leap during this global pandemic?
It definitely gave us sort of, or myself, so a bit of pause for thought. Definitely, it's sort of, as I said, this is a point we've been working to for a long time, and it's obviously not ideal what's going on, and it's been sort of well publicised that sport in general took a hit, businesses in general took a hit. I am incredibly fortunate that I am taking over an existing business with existing clients and existing horses. And one, they've been incredibly supportive, and I nearly to a man have backed me to carry on and to stay with me. But also, I think anybody who was going to drop out because of COVID would have done so already, and that they are at the moment okay to carry on. And then if I didn't start, it would then just be a year working for Dad, and there is definitely a part of it being the momentum off the back of working for William Haggis and making the most of that. And so I didn't think there was much gain, say, waiting a year, and that actually it was just something that you've got to get on with. And there is probably, everyone will say there's nearly no good time to start. So let's just get on with it, I think.
Yeah. And your dad's so well liked, so well respected. He's done a terrific job, and he's got a beautiful stable. So it's great to hear that those owners, who obviously you're a close family, will carry on with you. Speaking of the family, and I know from chatting to you personally and sort of away from the races, if you like, your brother David has done terrifically well in Australia in partnership with Kieran Meyer. And you mentioned your trip to Australia. Was there ever any part of you that was seriously considering setting up in Australia and sort of copying David's path, given the climate of racing in England?
Most definitely. I think I'm in an incredibly fortunate position where my parents have been very supportive of any decision that we've made, whatever that may be. And as long as we make decisions that we feel are best for us, they'll happily support. And being in Oz during COVID time, where it's a stark contrast, the health of the industry down there versus basically any other racing industry apart from probably Hong Kong, it's incredibly healthy down there. And they're very good at giving young people a chance. And so I definitely gave it a thought, and I got approached by a couple of people, and I did have a think about it, but and interestingly, there might have been a tougher decision if COVID wasn't going on, because with travel being restricted and everything that was going on, I'd have been able to get back and forth to Australia, and I might have sort of sounded out more options and more ideas. But as it was, once I got back, and obviously borders started closing sort of quite strongly, that helped make my decision. And at the end of the day, as I've said, few people get the chance to set up having the leg up that I'm going to get with my father training and a yard in Newmarket. And I felt there was too good an opportunity to pass up training in Newmarket. And I'd tell you what's been really nice is the response since people have heard has been, only positive.
From other
that was
trainers. Refreshing.
From other trainers, friends, family, people I see in the industry, people racing, everyone's been very positive. So that's been really nice.
And how does it work? So obviously it's come out that you're going to be training. So then do you are people ringing you up now going, I want to have a horse with you? Like how are you doing it?
Yes and no. A couple of people have, and I went to Doncaster Sales, and I got loose from both my agent and my parents, and I bought one on spec, which means that you don't have owners when you buy it. And I sort of, once I bought her, I was then sort of scratching my head a bit, wondering what on earth I'd just done and how I was going to tell my parents.
How much did you pay for her?
28, which,
nice.
I mean, that's a lot of money, Ollie. And Doncaster Sales subsequently on the set about an hour later were trying to get hold of me, and on the docket that you sign, they couldn't read my writing, and so they couldn't get hold of me. So they called Dad, saying, "We understand you're at Donny, and we need to have a talk." And he said, "I'm actually not at Donny, but my son is. Please don't tell me he's divorced." So I thought I was calling him to tell him, and he already knew. So, but he took it okay, and luckily that one has been sort of friends and family, and I've got her sold, which is a big relief, because I'd be hearing about it if not.
You better be good. I love that when you were like, our dad supports every decision we make.
Yeah, true. Yeah. No, right behind me he was, yeah. Yeah.
But like those things, buying horses on spec, they're relatively common, but they're probably incredibly daunting for someone who's doing it for the first time, who needs owners in and actually who doesn't have 28 grand in their bank account to be able to pay for it. But I bet it's exciting for you to go to the races and to be starting to buy these horses on your own. And we'll get to that in a moment, because it's a really important time for sales season. But before we get to that, I just want to ask about your background, because as you say, with William Haggis and some great trainers before that, What have you, do you think, been able to learn, not only from your father, but also the trainers along the way that you're going to implement in how you do your things?
A huge amount that would bore you to tears.
Yeah.
And like anyone, there is no substitute for experience. So the longer you just are in it, the better. I think most importantly, especially now and how people expect operations to be run in general. And I think, again, COVID has made that an interesting point of people working from home and how do you streamline your business. And being organized is probably the most important part about running an efficient, successful, consistent business. I think consistency in sport is the hardest thing to achieve, isn't it? There are lots of, it's easy to like play very well once or go around and scratch once. I don't know if you know about that, Ollie, but it's great.
Definitely.
But consistency is very difficult. And I'm sure that being organized and having a good system and set up in place with the right people is key, really, for longevity at the top.
And working with a yard like William Haggis's means that you're dealing with like the top level owners, top levels, breeding operations, etc. So now you're setting out. Do you then pick up the phone and go, "Hey, it's Harry. I'm going out on my own, and I'd like you to send me a horse"? Like how a lot of people watching this will not have a clue what you now need to do to fill up a yard in your own.
I think that there are everyone will be very different. It'll be a very personal way of dealing with it. I, for two reasons, won't do that much. Mainly because my understanding will be that I've worked very hard for the boss and he's given me a great experience. If he thinks I'm good enough and deserve it, he will mention me to owners.
Right.
And it will be their decision. But also, he didn't start with these owners. He's worked incredibly hard to get these owners, and they've recognized him through winners and having good winners. And that's how they choose their trainers. And it's quite right. You know, they're a business and they want to be at the top. And so you've got to prove yourself first. So that's slightly, as you're saying, though, it's that chicken and egg. Like, how do you get those horses in to prove that you're good enough for them? You go to Donny and spend 28 grand. And buy a Gurkha filly.
That is a very it makes perfect sense actually. And I guess my point about what you learned was that you've mentioned a few times about having a very good sort of leg up. You say a lot of people in racing are sort of born into it. There is a certain amount of nepotism, perhaps, that, I mean, people certainly say with me in my role, and perhaps going into yard, people say, "Oh, you know, has he really earned it?" But you've proven with years of sort of grafting, and I know that you and your brother are like probably the biggest grafters of all the assistants, you know, that there are.
Well, there'd be some of them clamoring if they could hear this, probably. But
yeah,
I know what you're saying. I know.
But I suppose it's now like now you've got the name and the ticket. You're sort of going into that pool where you're not like a hardworking assistant anymore. You're now competing with John Gosden, with William Haggis,
and you're unproven.
Yeah,
which can be attractive to some people, but also it's, well, let's see if he has any idea what he's doing before we entrust him with our horses. So
absolutely. But do you think being young in this industry now is more attractive for an owner looking to send their horse somewhere than it was, say, 10 years ago? You see, like...
yeah, I would say so, yeah. But I think people have always given young people a chance all the way through. You know, so when Dad started training, Jeff Smith, who actually owned the yard, and he sold the yard to Dad, he subsequently then gave Dad the chance to prove himself. So there are people out there that will back you, but you just can't assume that people will, I think. And rather than thinking these are the numbers I'll have and then it disappoints, you just get on with what you have and you do it to the best of your ability, and hopefully off that results follow, and people start sort of building up a bit of momentum.
And the other thing that we actually haven't said it, but we actually used to live together, which is why I was able to see how hardworking you were in comparison to, say, me, for example. But
there were many a morning where I'd come down to go to work and you'd still be up playing poker online.
Very successfully, I may add.
Annoyingly successfully, because I'm about to earn more than you make in a year.
The one thing I also know about you is that you're quite understated as well. And in an age where people like Archie Watson are training 8,000 winners, Hugo Palmer had a classic winner in his first year, and we heard a lot about Hugo Palmer early on. We still hear a lot about Hugo Palmer. Given that you are a young trainer, you're the sort of new cab on the rank now, have you got anything in mind, anything sort of new age, if you like, thinking as to how you're going to like stand out? Or is it simply just a case of go about my business quietly, train winners, and let people see for themselves that I can deliver?
The latter.
Yeah, that's very.
No, I know exactly what you're saying, and it's actually more and more people almost expect it, and that it's part of it, of the role, and get yourself out there and let people know, and I get that, and I'm not trying to hide myself under a rock and just work in the yard and never be seen, but again, learning from Dad, his best owners have been the guys that have been with him very solidly through thick and thin. And if you can attract those owners through your work and what you've done, rather than trying to convince them to have a horse with you, and then it's less their idea and more a sort of agreement, I think you'll have more longevity together. I think if you go after them and then it's sort of that honeymoon period, and then actually they find out they don't like you necessarily, or the way you do it, and so that's sort of the wrong sort of relationship.
Yeah.
So it's all about trust. They've got to trust me. So it helps if they've come to me rather than the other way around, I would say.
It goes back to that consistency point. So, yeah, it's hugely exciting. Is your dad, like, what happens now? You're going to go to the sales and probably not be allowed to buy anything on spec anymore. Is that right?
No more. That's actually Mum. She runs the books, and she categorically told me I couldn't buy one after the Gurkha, and I've bought two since. So I'm really under lock and key.
You listening to anything they're saying?
Yes, yeah. They're okay. They're fine. I think.
Have you got orders for the sales? How many boxes have you?
I've very luckily got two. Right. I've got one with a great mate of ours, actually, Martin Mitchell.
Oh, brilliant.
He has a horse, his first ever horse he's had shares of horses with Dad and Ed Dunlop and Billy Knight, but he had his first ever horse outright in his silks for Charlie Fellows. That isn't bad, actually. He's done okay and bought the horse in training. This will be his first yearling. So we'll be looking at filling that order at book 2. He can be he's in on us. So James Horse and I, a few years ago, started pinhooking a couple of foals because we, as you said, worked hard enough without having any skin in the game, I think is what they say. And so we thought we'd buy a couple of foals and sell them as yearlings. And Mitch joined in with us on that. And the first shortlist we made to show him to look at the foals, he absolutely tore to shreds. Just like, no, we're not having that. Not having it. So I don't know how this is going to go at book 2 at Tats, but I'm sure it'll be great.
You want me to entertain him in the green room whilst you go out and buy that?
Yeah, if you could, yeah, team up. And then a mate called Bobby Jackson, who works in the marketing department at Tassels, has got a syndicate of friends together, and we're going to do similar thing by yelling at Tats, hopefully.
But how many horses has Park Lodge? How many stables does it have? Like how many?
We've got 35 boxes
currently in, which I'm guessing will all go to you. The horses that are currently there.
Yes, yeah, they'll stay. There's 4 going to the sales, and at the moment the rest will stay, and I'll try to not ruin them.
You won't. So if people, I'm guessing people can just find your number on the website and give you a call if they want to send a horse your way.
Yeah, the website is currently in production. It's not my forte, that side of it, and so I'm getting a lot of hassle about it. But yeah, there's something called an arrival page or something, and it will say that it's coming soon. But these are my details, so that it's coming soon.
Type in your name. And I suppose as we wrap this up, what do you think the biggest challenges in this climate are for you setting out? What do you think your main challenges are going into this?
I think predominantly that owners have horses to go to the races and hopefully watch them win, but at least go to the races and enjoy their experience. And they've been incredibly understanding, and it's improving, but it's a very difficult stage to work through. And I'm sure that lots of people have had a long think about whether they think they should keep having horses in training, especially if they can't go and watch them at the races and actually enjoy them. So first and foremost, the owner experience is key, really. And if people enjoy going racing and enjoy having a horse with me, I think that's the biggest hurdle over with, and then we'll just try and have them a horse that wins.
And have you allowed yourself the opportunity to think about what that would feel like, your first winner?
No.
That's that dealt with.
No, I mean that would be thinking a long way in advance, and we'll just get my license first and foremost, and then we'll get the right horse to the races and that sort of thing, and get the baby steps right.
It has been a very difficult year for everyone, and I'd like to end on a high note. What are you looking forward to the most? Like, why is this for you so exciting?
Honestly, the thing I'm looking forward to the most, as you said, I've spent a long time building up my experience, and I'm looking forward to applying that with horses I've picked and bought with Anthony Bromley, my agent, or whoever, and progressing them from yearling stage to runners and winners on the racetrack. That's what I'm most excited about. Yeah, seeing if I'm good enough at it.
Yeah, I have absolutely no doubt that you'll make a huge success of it. Will there be any side bets going on the Newmarket Gallops with fellow Scotts, Bowie, Palmers about who's going to have the most success and things like that, or is it to yourself?
I don't think I wouldn't bet. I wouldn't back me anyway against those boys. George Bowie's had an excellent year. Give me a year or two, and then we can probably have a chat about it. Yeah,
I'll set the book in a year or two. I'm sure that everyone watching this will be in complete agreement that they will wish you, as I will, a tremendous amount of success. I'd like to think, and I'm sure we can, on Sporting Life, sort of follow various parts of your journey, because I think it will be fascinating to see a trainer in this time set up through COVID, etc. But you are understated, you're a grafter, and you're going to make a tremendous trainer. So best of luck, and we'll chat to you soon, Harry.
Thanks very much, Ollie.